Hello everybody, welcome to the Ultimate Scouting Show. Thank you for joining me. Today we are going to be looking at Will Levis and why I think he is a better quarterback than a lot of NFL draft fans give him credit for. Let's dive right into it. Looking at the background for Will Levis, he was a three-star prospect coming out of Middletown, Connecticut. He committed to Penn State, where he backed up Sean Clifford for 2 years before eventually transferring to Kentucky. In 2021, it was Levis's first year starting at Kentucky. He had a pretty good season with a 66% completion percentage, 2,826 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions, as well as 376 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns to add to his tally there. He was very, very impressive, got a lot of hype from the draft community. And then in 2022, he had another pretty decent season. It was a 65.4 completion percentage, 2,406 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He was sacked 37 times in 11 games, which absolutely destroyed his rushing stats, but he did add 2 rushing touchdowns in 2022. There was a lot of hype about Will Levis. Is he going to take that next step and really become one of the front runners for that number 1 overall pick in this draft here? And I think for a lot of people, he did not take that step. It's very understandable. The stats really don't jump off the page, but I do think that there is some important context in Will Levis that you really need to examine. His 2021 season, he had Wan'Dale Robinson. He also had a couple of offensive linemen that were very talented. They got drafted in Fortner and Kennard. He also had his offensive coordinator leave, and so it was a really talent-deprived Kentucky team playing in the SEC with a new coaching staff that really didn't use Levis to his full strengths on that offensive side of the ball. And yeah, he didn't have his best season, that's for sure. But I do think you need to consider the context of what Will Levis was working with and the people around him at that Kentucky situation this past year. He's listed at 6'3", 231 pounds. He is 23, which makes him a little bit of an older prospect. So it's going to be very important for him to ace these interviews and really see where he ends up on a lot of these teams' boards. Diving into some of the strengths for Will Levis, his arm talent and his velocity on his throws are really, really impressive. He would probably have a top 10 arm in the NFL from day one. And he can make throws that just not a lot of NFL quarterbacks can make. You regularly see him hit throws from the far hash, a lot of outbreaking routes, deep balls. He consistently is able to get the ball there on time, on target, and with plenty of velocity and arm strength. You know, that is not a concern at all for him. That's my number 1 thing that I look for. You have to be able to get the ball to your wide receivers in the NFL. Levis will not have any problems with that from a velocity or an arm strength standpoint. He's really, really impressive when it comes to that. He also ran a pro-style offense at Kentucky, which is good to see. He ran a lot of stuff under center, which you don't always see from quarterbacks in the college level. He ran a lot of different play action sets. He had full field progressions. So definitely something that I think will certainly help him in this process. Having that experience in a pro-style offense makes him very appealing to NFL head coaches because you figure the learning curve is really just not going to be as steep for him. In that pro-style offense, also, it really showed his ability to throw on the run. They ran him on a lot of bootlegs, a lot of, moving the pocket, and he was really impressive while that pocket was moving. Both rolling to the right and to the left, he was able to set his feet, fire downfield, and, certainly get the ball to where he wanted it to go. There were some really impressive plays of him rolling to his left, setting his feet, and absolutely launching it. That's not something that you see from a lot of different quarterbacks. Having that ability in college that you have displayed is something that I find very valuable as well. And, he's got experience doing a lot of these things that NFL coaches are going to ask of him. So that is a very big plus for Levis. Not only that, I do think he throws with very good anticipation when his wide receivers are coming out of their route breaks. Generally speaking, the ball doesn't really arrive late. He's able to anticipate when they're going to break on their routes and make sure the ball gets there when the separation is maximized, which is really what you want to see. Sometimes quarterbacks wait for the wide receiver to come open before they pull the trigger. I don't really find that to be a problem with Will Levis. I think he can be an anticipatory passer. Sometimes that gets him into trouble because, he's just trusting his wide receiver and he's going to throw it whether he's open or not. But regardless, he is proactive and he is able to get the ball there when they're coming out of their route break, which is something that you really do want to see. Generally speaking, his accuracy I do think is pretty good. Because of the arm talent, he is able to fit it into really tight windows on a regular basis. He'll certainly have his misses, and that is something that he needs to continue to be a little bit more consistent with. He needs better ball placement in certain areas, protecting his wide receivers, keeping it away from defenders, just making sure that you're hitting them in stride. That is something that I do think that he needs to continue to work on. But from a general standpoint, I really do think that a lot of the arm talent allows him to place that ball in some really tight windows, and he has shown that, when everything is clicking, his accuracy can be really, really good, and it's not really a concern of mine. He had a good completion percentage in college as well, over 65% in both of his years starting, so that is certainly a good sign as well. Levis is also very mobile for his size, and I think, he is a bit of a power runner in the run game. I saw him truck a linebacker. I saw him, break through multiple sacks. He's not an easy guy to bring down at all. He's got a big, thick frame, which is really good for sustaining hits. It's very good for picking up, big chunk plays. It's very good for breaking sacks and getting the most out of plays as well. So I think he is a very underrated runner, and his big frame really allows him to take full advantage of that athletic ability. He certainly runs some read options. He can be a very, very good quarterback sneak weapon. He's somebody that can escape the pocket when the protection breaks down and run for 5 or 7 yards on a very consistent basis. I even saw him hurdle a linebacker, which is pretty impressive to see. He is certainly a good athlete, and I think that is an underrated part of his game. He's not going to absolutely break off giant plays, but definitely has the ability to pick up 7 yards and a first down when the protection breaks down, which I think is a very, very important trait in a quarterback as well. When he gets good protection in the pocket, I also think that he has pretty good movement within the pocket. The ability to manipulate the pocket, step up, avoid the rush, and deliver a throw is something that, I think is a very overlooked trait in a quarterback. Levis does it at a pretty consistent level when his protection is good. In 2022, we saw his protection break down a lot more, and he really didn't have that trust in the offensive line. But when you look at the 2021 tape, he is able to use these little movements within the pocket, get that little bit of an extra half second to throw, and rip it downfield. That's awesome to see. And from everything that I have heard, he is a very, very good leader. He's somebody that teammates want to be around. He's somebody that you want to build a franchise around, build a program around. And so that is awesome to see from a quarterback that is probably the most important trait. And it seems like he has that. So that's awesome to see. There are a lot of pros for Will Levis, which is why I think, he has his faults, which we'll get to in just a second. But this guy is a very, very talented player, and I get the hype with him. Now, looking at both the tape and the numbers, 2022 was a rough season for Will Levis. The talent around him, like I mentioned, was really, really poor. It did not allow him to play to the best of his abilities. I thought the play calling was terrible. They really just ran a bunch of screens, a bunch of quarterback design runs. They just did not trust the offensive line to hold up, which they were not very good. They gave up 37 sacks, but it just was not an NFL caliber playbook. That being said, Will Levis did have his fair share of problems as well. My number one concern with him is he is a little bit of a one-read quarterback. Typically, he goes through a half-field read. It's usually about 2 guys. And then if it's not there, he'll either force it into coverage or he'll take off and run. Not necessarily a terrible thing, but I would really like to have him develop to a full field progression kind of player. He's shown he can do it. He's shown that he can get to his check down. You don't see it enough on tape at all. That's certainly something that he definitely needs to improve on. I think NFL coaching will certainly help him get there, but he has to be better at going through full field progressions. If it's not there, hit your check down. If it's not there, maybe then take off. But he is a bit of a one-read quarterback, and that goes into his decision-making as well. Typically, he's just going to throw it to one of those first 2 reads. That gets him into some trouble sometimes because, he did have quite a few turnovers in his time at Kentucky. You certainly would not like to see double digits for a quarterback going this high in the draft in that interception column. And, sometimes he really did just force the ball, and it wasn't a good decision. And there were some plays that, he probably could have had a couple more interceptions on the docket there. There was also a couple of plays here and there that it was like, okay, he threw a screen straight to the corner because the offensive coordinator kept calling screens over and over again, or his wide receiver just tipped it up straight into the defender's arms. So you cannot look just at the stats and come to this determination. I think a lot goes into it for Will Levis, but generally speaking, his decision-making has got to be better, and I think a lot of that comes from being able to progress through the entire field and really, not force the ball into that first or second read and, be able to hit that check down or be able to move to that third progression more consistently. As I mentioned before, his accuracy is a bit up and down as well. There are a couple of times that he just misses way behind his wide receiver, or he misses way high and it gets tipped up and intercepted. I think he just needs to be a little bit more consistent. He needs to settle down, and I do think that pressure can occasionally rattle him when it's right in his face. He just needs to settle down and be a little bit better about, making sure that that ball gets placed exactly where it needs to go. And I think some of that comes down to he lost faith in his offensive line, and it's very evident on tape. You can see him constantly retreating in the pocket, even if, they're not really getting pass rush on him in 2022. He just had no faith that the offensive line was going to hold up for good reason, but he was developing some bad habits. They're throwing off the back foot, panicking under pressure and escaping the pocket when he really didn't need to. In 2021, he looked very calm, very composed under pressure for the most part. In 2022, you did not see that same player there. And that's really the tale of the tape here. 2022, you saw some bad habits, you saw some really poor play calling and play around him, but he had a lot of issues in 2022. In 2021, I thought he was a really, really dynamic quarterback. I thought he was hitting his players in stride. I thought he looked very comfortable within the pocket, and his arm strength was really on full display. So it's just, which quarterback are you going to get? That's the biggest question here. Coming to a final grade for Will Levis, I have him rated as an 86.79. That is a mid to late first round pick on my draft scale. A lot of people think that Hendon Hooker should be rated higher than him, or, that it's absurd that he is a first round grade. I don't think that's absurd at all. I think he is well above Hendon Hooker's level. I do think he's probably going to be my number 3 quarterback in this draft. I haven't scouted Anthony Richardson yet, may do that one next, but I really, really like the talent of Will Levis. I think his natural tools are incredibly evident. He's going to have to go to the right system. He's going to have some players around him that he can take advantage of, but the natural talent is undeniable with Will Levis. And you've got to give him some protection. You've got to help make sure that he is progressing through a full progression and that you're able to get some of those interceptions down. But I do think that Will Levis has a ton of potential, and I do get the hype on him. Maybe not number 1 overall hype, but certainly first round hype, maybe that top 10 hype as well. So I do think he is a better player than people give him credit for. Let me know down below. Do you agree? Do you think he is a terrible player? You wouldn't be alone if you do think that, but I think when you really dive into the film in both 2021 and 2022, you see a different picture and really get the full idea of this player in Will Levis. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much. Bye.